Hi, everyone. Welcome to Talk is Cheap, None Cuts, None Censors. I'm your host, Miss Carrie, baby, again with another special episode, another special guest tonight, Miss Melissa Rohlfs. Yeah, she's here all the way from Arizona. Yes.
Yay!
And it's been great meeting with her. And we talked a few months ago, and it was amazing hearing her story. So she's here for her final interview tonight and sharing her story with you guys, my listeners. Thank you guys for supporting me as well. And thank you, Melissa, for being here tonight.
Of course. Thank you for having me. We might have a cat join us, so it'll be like two guests.
Yes, ma'am. That's fine. I love all animals. I used to have a few cats myself, and now I'm a precious dog mom. So yes, it's great though, and it's good to see you. So tonight, me and Melissa will be talking about a few different things, but one thing we like to focus on tonight within her story and her experience with PTSD. So post-traumatic stress disorder. I've done a few episodes on PTSD, but they're all pretty different, and some have similarities. But Miss Melissa's is really life-changing and showing how she overcomes and how she even found out she had PTSD, and also just her telling her story how she lived with PTSD for about finding out about 10 years ago, and her experience with those things. So yes, Miss Melissa, please introduce yourself and share your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You've got a very good memory, Carrie. So I was diagnosed, like you said, with PTSD about 10 years ago. I was a new mom, and we had a newborn baby who wasn't sleeping, and we had a toddler who had some food intolerances we weren't aware of. My husband was traveling for work, and I was just diagnosed. And it was really interesting because the woman I was meeting with who gave me the diagnosis, we actually started in a life coaching relationship because I just felt overwhelmed as a mom. I felt like I had kind of lost myself. I felt just kind of like blah. So I wanted to meet with somebody who could maybe help me figure out, how do I merge my pre-child life with my life as a mom, and really how do I do that? So I met with a life coach who actually was also a therapist. And through the course of our coaching relationship, she was like, gosh, you've mentioned some trauma from childhood. You've mentioned some things. Do you think you could have PTSD? And my first response to her, Carrie, was, no, I was not in the military. I can't have that. And so she had to explain to me that, people who aren't in the military have trauma, and they can have PTSD as well. And so through the course of our relationship, she diagnosed me, and we went from coaching to counseling, because in that point she couldn't coach me in that format. She had to switch to the therapist role. So that's a little bit of my diagnosis and where it all started.
Yes, great. And we'd like to hear more about that. But first, you guys, just thinking about PTSD, like Miss Melissa said, you don't have to be in the war or have, or any type of different traumas to have PTSD. Hers came from different things of her childhood. Like she said, even fulfilling in postpartum depression when having a baby. So there's different types of symptoms that go along with PTSD. But PTSD is a disorder in which a person has difficulty recovering after an experience or witnessing a terrible event. So that's within itself. A lot of times we think that, like I said, war is in that definition, or something really, really bad, or seeing somebody murdered has happened. But with PTSD or any other disorders, it's about your experience and how that personal experience has affected you and how you move your life forward with dealing with that trauma and your experience within it. So yes, ma'am. So Melissa, just jumping right in, what were some things that you noticed when having that you had PTSD, or well, you said that you didn't know, but what were some things you noticed to even get help?
Well, I think, I just was very overwhelmed. I was very frustrated. I was exhausted. I was very crabby, very irritable, and all through life. And I think some of this is personality, and I think some of it was a coping mechanism, and I've been able to decipher the two. But I was pretty happy-go-lucky, very spunky, very cheery, very bubbly, and that just was kind of gone. Like, that sparkle was gone. So I think those were some of the initial reasons. But I remember after she suggested that and I went home and researched it, there was like this weight lifted, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not just a crabby, overwhelmed mom that's in a funk. Like there's something going on. And now that I know what's going on and I have that awareness, we can take steps towards healing. And that was really exciting because it was the relief of knowing that there was something that I had going on that I had been diagnosed with and that I could work through it and find healing on the other side.
Wow. Yeah. And that's a lot of times where people don't notice a lot of different things. But they like, I like to know what like happened in your life to say, hey, something is wrong, or not even knowing that you were living with this disorder for that long and you were noticing different things, or how is your family noticing different things about you? So yeah, what were some things that your family noticed, like your husband noticed, even before kids or even after the kids? What are some things that were different?
I think the biggest thing was I kind of shut off my feelings. Like I didn't want to feel. I think it was self-protection. So I think I just shut off my feelings and I just kind of went through the motions and I was just kind of surviving and trying to just do everything for everybody. I think that was a big one. I think the other big one would be when he would travel for work and the kids would act out or they would misbehave or they would be kids and I didn't know how to handle that. And I would just get very angry and very just like just wasn't a very happy mom. I think those were probably the two biggest things.
Wow. So dealing with PTSD, and some of your childhood traumas, what were some things that you experienced within your childhood that you feel like were factors of getting PTSD?
Yeah, so my father was murdered when I was 2. I'm from a really small town in the Midwest,
Wow.
and he was murdered, and I grew up not knowing him and just, being in a small town, you hear rumors and you hear things. And so I think it was this big hole of, wow, what happened? There were just so many question marks. I think I felt really unsafe. I didn't know who knew what. Like, I just didn't have that safe space to really just ask my questions because I think my mom was doing the best that she could, obviously. And she went from being a married woman with a 2-year-old child to being a single parent overnight and running a business and having to do all of these things. So I think she was managing her own healing while doing all of that. And it must have been a lot because I didn't have that trauma with my children, but I know that that's a lot to raise kids and have a business.
Yes. Yes, that is. So did you guys move within this time that your dad was killed, or how was growing up with just your mom?
That's a good question. I think we did move houses eventually because I don't remember the house that we lived in when he was killed, but I do know that from that house we went to another house. And this is a really weird memory. But I remember my mom was in the bathtub one night and the doorbell rang. So, me being a little 4 or 5-year-old girl, I go and answer the door and the man's like, oh, are your parents home? I'm like, no, my dad is dead and my mom is in the bathtub.
Wow.
And he was like, okay, I'll come back later. And so I go into the bathroom and I'm like, Mom, there was a man at the door. And she's like, well, what did you say? And I told her and she scolded me, not like, it wasn't in a punishment way, but it was kind of like, okay, you probably don't want to tell people that your dad is gone because that makes us not so safe. And I just remember that shame and that guilt of, oh my gosh, I don't know how to verbalize what my reality is.
Wow. So how was life growing up without a dad? Do you feel like there was something that you were missing with not having your father there, or things that you
Absolutely.
grew up and said, man, if dad could see these things, look how, how he would react or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And growing up, like everybody was always like, oh, you look so much like your mom. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, are they saying that because they didn't know my dad? Or there was like this whole missing side of me. But the cool thing, Carrie, about all of this is that, so after college, I graduated and I moved out of state, met my husband, got married, had kids, and we ended up going back near my hometown. We moved there before we were here in Arizona. And part of my journey in going back home was really discovering who my dad was through other people's eyes rather than what I had been told. So I reached out to some of his fraternity brothers and was in contact with them and just explaining, I want to know my dad from your perspective. And so I got the most wonderful emails from people who knew him and just, saying all these things. And through that journey, Carrie, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much of him in me. and he
Yeah.
was left-handed, and our daughter is left-handed. So it was
Wow.
just cool to see, like, what we did get from him, even though I didn't know him.
Mm. So did your mom ever, I know your mom, I'm pretty sure your mom did tell you things about your dad, but was it just something wondering in you how others saw him instead of just hearing it from your mom, like, oh, your dad was this, your dad was that? Was it just something fulfilling more coming from other people as well?
Yes, absolutely. Because I feel like it was a very one-dimensional side of this
Mm.
is who he was, but I wanted to know the whole person. I wanted to
Yeah.
know what other people thought and how
It
they
was
felt
hard,
about
you
him and what
know.
their experiences were.
Yeah. Like, what colleges he go to? Did he go to parties? Did he,
Yes,
where
tell
did
me
he hang
that
out
stuff.
at? Yeah. And your mom was probably like, he was a good husband. He worked hard.
Yes. It was
So
like a
how did
very like
your
in the box.
so how did your dad die? I know as he got older, what was the stories about how he was killed?
Well, that's what's really strange. Like, to be honest with you, there weren't really any stories. And in fact, as I've gotten older and I've worked through and done quite a bit of healing, I share on social media from time to time. I shared not too long ago something. I think it was like Father's Day last year. And I had classmates, they were like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, how did you not know that? Like, we were in the same small town. Like,
Yeah.
there's 40 people in our class. No, probably 89 in our class. But like,
Oh
how
wow.
did you not know that? Like, it just blew my mind that people didn't know that. And maybe it's because I thought I had a label on my chest of, oh, her dad was murdered, or, I don't know. I don't know what people thought.
Yeah. Wow.
So see, I'm still kind of spunky and bubbly.
Yeah. No, you're doing great, Melissa. And just thinking about how long ago that happened, that would cause something, not even just post traumatic distress, but a sense of the unknown. Like, us being humans, we hate to not know certain things, or how did this go down? Can you reenact this? Or, and so, like you said, that just was a traumatic and within itself to know that your dad got killed. And like you said, did I walk around with a tag on my head that said, oh, her father's dead, she's raised by a single mom? Or did people just think that, oh, did her dad leave her mom or something like that? A lot of different stereotypes or stigmas as people do. um, when they see single mothers or single families and stuff. So how was it growing up being the only child with your mom?
Well, that was interesting too, because when I was about 8, Carrie, my mom remarried. And so I got a
Mm.
stepbrother, which is real interesting being in a blended family because it's very obvious, that I was my mom's child and my stepbrother was my dad's. And it was very much like, it was very kind of like we would pick sides. And during arguments, like the parent would pick the side. Like it was just kind of interesting.
Yeah. How
So
old were
I,
you
I
when
didn't
you
know.
were
Like I was like, am I an only child? Biologically I am, but in my
married?
like familial relationship, I'm the younger sibling. So I don't know. Like if
Oh
I still
wow.
to this day, I'm like, am I younger? Am I the only? I don't know.
Yeah. How old were you when they remarried? I mean, when she remarried?
I was about 8. No,
Yeah.
I was in kindergarten. I think I was 5 or 6 because they told me if I
Mhm.
behaved during the ceremony, I was the flower girl, I would get a sticker book. So every 5 minutes I'm sitting there going, do I get my sticker book? Do I get my sticker
Yeah. Wow. So how did that? Do you feel like that affected you in some type of way, or were you,
Absolutely.
were you excited to
Absolutely.
have a dad? Like, did you have that feeling like, wow, I finally get to have somebody in my life to call dad? Plus, you got him at an early age when
Yeah,
they got
yeah, but
remarried.
it was weird because like I knew that he wasn't my biological dad. He was the only dad that I
Mhm.
knew, and he, stepped in and filled those shoes. But I
Yeah.
think it was still interesting because my biological dad was an only child, and so he didn't adopt me because he wanted me to have my dad's
Okay.
last name, which is very honorable. I
Yes,
respect
it is.
that. But I think as a kid, I felt like I don't fit here because my last name is different.
Mm. Okay. Wow. Yeah, and a lot of times that is how people are affected. They feel like the outcast, so they feel different within that time, or something's not right because like you said, you was very aware that that's not my real dad. Wow. So with having your own family and your own children, I guess I'm moving more into the postpartum trauma. How did that come about?
I think it was the childhood trauma. And I had worked through some of it, but I don't think I fully worked through all of it because my mindset, Carrie, was I'm good. I've gone to the therapist. I'm good. And I didn't want to keep picking that scab, but I knew when like after I had my kids and it kind of hit the fan and I got the diagnosis, I'm like, I need to do something because my kids don't deserve this kind of a mom. Nor does my husband deserve this kind of a wife. Nor do I deserve to be this way in the world. Like,
wow. So how long did you go to therapy? And what was the first initial reason? Was it just about your childhood traumas, or was it because you felt like something was wrong?
there were a lot of different, I've been in therapy a lot. I think initially my mom put me in because of my dad, but when you're so young, I don't think you grasp that. So that was the first time. And then after I met my husband and I was doing full-time ministry, there were some things where I'm like, you know what, I probably should talk to somebody about this. So I went into therapy then, and then did it again more intensely. And that's when I got the diagnosis, was after I had the kids. But I'm like, wow, that's kind of wild. I'd been in therapy 2 other times, and the trauma, I don't know if it was called trauma, and my level of awareness might be totally different too because of where I had been. But I just was surprised, like, wow, I'd been in therapy 2 other times and not gotten the PTSD diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. So how are things now? Are you still currently in therapy?
I'm not. From time to time we'll go for like a check-in as needed. But I think for me, Carrie, like getting the diagnosis was so life-changing because through that I learned about the power of food on mood and mental health. I learned about what foods I can handle and how they affect me. I learned how to listen to my body. Like it took me on this powerful healing journey that made me want to go to school and become a coach so I can help other women because we're just not taught these things. And the level of awareness for me was so low that I'm like, I know that if I didn't learn this, other people didn't learn it either. So I'm thankful for the diagnosis because I think it set me on a totally different trajectory than I would have been on otherwise.
Yes, and that's great. And just moving right into our next question about your life coaching and how you came, how you became of that, and how does your company help other women now?
Yeah, so it's funny because I was such a fan of life coaching. I've had life coaching several times in my life for various things. So I love the life coaching because I know how powerful that is. I know that coaching is really like helping people where they're at and getting them from where they are to where they want to go. And I love that. So I knew that coaching was a part of it, but I chose the school that I did because it was health and life. And that was my journey, right? Like I did the life thing, but the trauma brought up the health thing and the food thing. And so I knew that I had to integrate both of them. So what I do now is I help women break free and get unstuck so that they can be calm, confident, and at peace. And that I went from like hot mess express, frazzled, overwhelmed, exhausted, stressed out mom to people telling me all the time, which makes me laugh. They're like, you're so calm. And I'm like, oh, if you only knew me like 10 years ago, I was anything but.
Wow. So how long do your clients typically stay with you? And what are some of the things that these clients are struggling with?
Yeah, so I really kind of specialize in sugar and emotional eating because that was my vice. Like I use sugar to numb and to self-soothe and cope. I started doing that when I was 8, Carrie. I can tell you stories of keeping Pop-Tarts and cookies and candy in my room and a little mouse coming and pooping on my bed and tattling on me and me getting in trouble for keeping food. But that was how I was coping with all of the chaos in my world. And that pattern just continued through adulthood, through having kids. And so that's really kind of what I specialize in is the sugar and emotional eating piece and getting to the root of what's going on. I have a 12-week program called Finding Freedom. That's a really great starting point. And I have some clients who do that and they're on their way. And then I have others that are like, you know what, I need a little bit more hand holding. And that's awesome. Like it can be whatever you need it to be. So
that's great. Great. So what are some of the things that the strategies that you use and what do you guys work on?
Yeah, I really teach women how to listen to their bodies because we're not taught how to honor our hunger and fullness. We're not taught what it means to honor our yes and our no. Like there's so many things that I really wish kids in school would learn today, because it would save us so much heartache and pain as adults.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
totally agree.
yes, but it's a lot of habit change, because we know what we know because of the way that we were raised or how we grew up. And so how do we take where we came from and maybe change the way we do things so we do it a little differently for our family? So it's a lot of habit change and really creating that lasting transformation, because it's not, here's a plan, here's a protocol, do this. It's more of what works for you. Let's talk about the season of life that you're in. Let's figure out what you need, and let's come up with something that's going to help you have sustainable results.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So just going back to PTSD, what were some of your experience? What did your PTSD look like? You hit on a little bit about like emotional eating and things, but what were some of the things that you were also doing that others would witness or that you noticed that wasn't right?
I was just angry. I was angry all the time, and it took very little to set me off. In fact, to this day, our daughter's now 13, and she'll say, "Do you remember that time that the Elmo balloon went up to the ceiling and you got really mad about it?" And I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like, really? My kids are going to remember me being angry about stupid crap like that." Like,
Yeah.
but
Wow.
there's redemption in that too, Carrie, because for Mother's Day, she wrote me a card, and her teacher was like, write out some really descriptive things about your mom. And one of the things she said was, you handle your emotions well. So we had a great talk about how, remember, I was the angry mom with the Elmo balloon, and how I've done some work and I've done some transformation and healing. And now you say I manage my emotions well, so you can change. It's possible.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, Miss Melissa, I guess we can kind of wrap it up here. It was pretty quick. But yeah, it was great having you on.
Thank you.
So what are some things that you would tell women that feel like, something is going wrong or feel like they have PTSD or postpartum? What are some encouraging things that you would say about getting help?
Totally get help. Like, I think, Carrie, in the last year, I think I have realized how prevalent trauma is. Everybody has some sort of trauma, whether you acknowledge it or not. Like, I think the past year has hit on everybody's hurt and pains. And I think we as a society really need to own our pain and our hurts and really work through that so that we can heal and raise up the next generation of kids who are emotionally healthy and stable. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. That's why people are here doing what we're doing, so that we can help and support and come alongside people who are where we were. So no shame in asking for help at all.
Yes, and that's what I always like to promote: asking for help, and seeking that help once it's given to you. Not saying that people don't want to just continue, but it does hurt a lot when you're continuing to give out that advice, or you're seeking that certain advice and then you don't take it, or it's like, okay, or somebody follow up with you and say, hey, did you go to where I referred you, Melissa, or where did you go to where I sent you care, and you're just like, oh, I haven't done it yet. So now that kind of makes that person step back and say, wow, do they want the help? Are they, I
Yeah.
said, then on the other foot about what are some people's, like just being that supportive person, that sometimes we don't know how to refer our friends to get help or refer seeking help. So you do need to know about the different life coaches that are in the world. You do need to know about different counseling services that are in your community and stuff as well. And then I remember the question I want to ask: how is everything? I know everything's probably great now, but how is your relationship with your family now?
It's so good. It's so good. I feel like the biggest thing that I have learned on my healing journey is that it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have emotions. And it's okay to let people know how you're feeling, right? Like, it's totally okay. I really want my kids to have that emotional safety to be able to share how they're feeling and what's going on, and really helping them navigate through that. Because that, I didn't have that. And that's why I went to the sugar stuffing the feelings, because I didn't know what to do with them. So, I think just giving them a safe space to be themselves. It's interesting, personalities as they're getting older, and one child's more like my husband. And so it's interesting, but just really, we're great. We're great. I feel like we're better than I could have ever imagined. Are we perfect? No, nobody is, but we're better than I thought it ever could be. So, and I think that's because I got help and I did the work.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit on something there, just going in and doing the work, and seeking, even though you have seek counseling over different times or many years, done many sessions, at least you got through it. And like you said, you overcame and you did the work and you stuck in there regardless of what was happening. And now things, no, we're not perfect, but things are looking better and things are better. I'm always promoting building healthy relationships around you and positivity as well.
You have to, because there's so much of that, not that outside. So if we can create that in our four walls of our home for our kids,
Yes.
that's really powerful.
Yes, ma'am. That's great. Well, Miss Melissa, it was great having you on Talk is Cheap. And thank you guys for tuning in tonight. So we will be building, like I said, lifelong connections. And you guys will see Miss Melissa on different, on my platform again in the future. And I thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for letting me come on, Carrie. I love what you're doing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. So you guys check out Miss Melissa's business. I will also put the link up for you in the description of tonight's episode. And you guys, if you're like we said, we're promoting seeking life coaches or life help or help in general. Always, you never know what anybody's going through. So just always just getting that help, because you, like you say, sometimes some people, we forgot this one, Melissa. Sometimes some people can't talk to the people that they live with in their house or don't even feel comfortable. Like, you love your family, but maybe I can't express what I'm going through with them, or you feel like they don't understand, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really helpful to have an outside, objective, non-judgmental opinion who can kind of speak in and see things from a different view.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for your support, and we'll be talking soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Carrie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in again to hear Miss Melissa Rohlfs' story. Shouts out to Arizona again, and I appreciate her being on tonight and supporting Talk is Cheap and sharing her story about PTSD and letting us go on that journey with her. And we talked about a lot of different things within childhood traumas, leading up to her having postpartum when having her children. And that's a lot of times where different moms are going through and a lot of things that they experience in life. And we like to tell you, seek help. You're not alone. Seek that different counseling, seek different therapies that you go through. Or a lot of times, like I love promoting this season, it's been a lot of different life coaches here that have taught about mindfulness. Melissa teaches the holistic life coaching and having eating disorders or using eating to, different coping methods and strategies to get through that, the traumas that you're experiencing. So yes, guys. So a couple of things here. Talk is Cheap season 2. It's coming to an end. And I thank you guys for going on this journey. It has been a great 16 episodes, tonight's included. And so in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to take a mini break, and then I'll be back on May the 24th for Talk is Cheap's first year anniversary. I have been doing my podcast for that long now, and it's only getting better and going up from here. And thank you to my fellow podcasters and mental health professionals that are here, and essential workers that have made time to be on this platform with me and go on this journey with me as well. So yes, guys, tune in to the YouTube channel, look on Facebook for latest episodes, and I'll see you guys at the end of this month in the next couple of weeks so we can celebrate the anniversary, and then we'll go from there. So yes, thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Talk is Cheap. I'm your host, Miss Carrie Baby, and I'm out. See you guys in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.